Amber,
Yes, Martin.
what adventure are you back from today? Because there's always an adventure.
Today's adventure has been, I've been doing a lot of grading and a lot of, I'm teaching an asynchronous course over this next semester. I'm not in class, and with that brings new challenges. And it's really tricky to try to build connection and communicate well when you are never going to meet these individuals face to face.
Mm,
And I say that I recognize as teams, we're doing this all the time now, but I particularly when I want their journey to be um, helpful, I'm there to support. I want them to learn, grow, but I also love to be impacted by them as well. It's really hard to cultivate that. And so much of it just feels like me on the other end grading. And that I'm not a believer in grades being a wise or truthful indicator of someone's journey, of learning. It's like a necessity, right? We have to have a metric. So let's make a metric.
yeah.
And you know what I'm discovering right now is so many of my students in this current course want it to be harder than it is.
Hmm.
And so most of the questions I'm receiving are, well, I need this and something must be missing. It can't just be like this. It can't just be that. And I'm like, oh, but it is. And they're like, no, I've got to be missing something. And I'm like, no. It's funny. I think sometimes in those education moments, we get into a zone and then we're like, it's going to be hard. And then we look for the hard. And when the hard isn't there, we invent it. Yeah. Anyway, so that's what I'm coming kind of back from to in my mental state to sit here and talk to you in this
No,
in this episode.
that's a great place to start from. Around the hard,
Yeah.
and especially given today's topic. And today's topic is
Yeah, today's topic is number 9 in the Feisty Manifesto, which is I own my missteps.
right.
And specifically, how I am continuing to learn how apologizing does not shrink my leadership. It actually is a key signal that I'm leading from awareness and not ego.
Hmm.
And it's interesting in me talking about my students, what I'm aware of is that's the gap. Because a lot of them are like, no, it can't be this simple. It has to be more complex than this. I'm taking a university course. It's a 4th year. It's got to be bigger and harder and more than you're asking me. To which I'm like, does it? Does it now? So the misstep there is this presumption
Mm-hmm.
that it needs to be complex and hard and that it can't just be actually what's right in front of them. And that for me, I won't speak to my students because that's their own journey, but for me there's a fight there between my ego and my awareness that I have had to wrestle with. And the idea that I don't want to be wrong, so I toil longer to try to gain more confidence in my rightness. When in my experience of leadership, rightness is it's never been what won. It's been in my ability to just go, "Oh, well, there you go. I totally missed that." And, huh, I I thought it was gonna be way more difficult than it was. Huh. Like, this idea that we can own our misinterpretations, our miscommunications, our missteps, and at the same time, it's not, like, the end of anything. It's just more of the journey. I sucked at this for most of my career.
Well, it was interesting when you first said it, that apologizing is a superpower. I thought, how Canadian? Because that is a Canadian superpower.
It is. Sorry.
But
Sorry.
we are
Sorry.
talking about context.
Yeah.
And what I loved about what I heard there, it reminded me of something I learned in the martial arts when I was like still a teenager, and it was the difference between correction and blame, and how for a lot of companies in North America, something goes wrong, we're looking for who to blame
Yep.
and how to send that blame towards someone.
Yep.
And how, when I was studying martial arts and learning about some of the companies there, blame was like the last thing on the list. What went wrong? What were the, indicating factors? How do we repair it? Like, we'll get to blame after we fixed everything. And I thought, these are two entirely different models.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you reconcile them? Because as you talked about, owning that,
Yeah.
like, owning that is really getting into the, it's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Mistakes are part of the game.
It's like I have been known at the front of the classroom. Usually the first week we gather at the beginning of a semester, I'll just say to the students, like, I'm not standing up here in front of you because I know everything or that I have gotten everything right. I said, I'm actually here representing how much I don't know and how wrong I've gotten it for so long. I said, the only distinction between the two is that I've just continued to learn and grow. And that's what's got me here. Right? Like that it's the chosen behavior upon recognizing the
Mm-hmm.
misstep. That's the leadership role. And there are a lot of us who are just so quick to defend ourselves. We're so quick to go, "Oh, it wasn't a mistake because here's my context." And I used to do that too. I used to always think, "Well, let me give you the context and then you'll understand I was right." Well, no. For me, very important for me to be seen as wrong, for me to accept that I was wrong, and for me to have to live in the wrong. Because for me, as an incredibly feisty and stubborn, albeit also egotistical individual in my earlier professional years, it took the horror of what that felt like in me accepting it to shake me up enough to make me realize that, oh, actually that was more powerful than the energy and effort I put into trying to get it right all the time. Also because, and this is where we go into that perfectionism, perfection doesn't exist. And so to immediately find ways to defend what I meant, well, when I said that, this is what I meant. Eh, just take the hit. The hit will bring far more learning and opportunity. And I realized, like, I didn't wanna take responsibility for missteps. I always wanted to look for others to blame, or I wanted the context to be the thing that could be blamed. Why? Why was I doing that? Because I was so fragile that if I was ever seen as doing something wrong, I would never be able to recover. And that, boy, there's a lot of us out there like that. And we are not operating from a place of value and worth. We are not operating from a place of real knowledge of self. We are fragile little children running around with no concept of what it means to be authentic, to be human, and to be okay with it. And that lack of awareness creates so much of a gap when it comes to leadership. And it's so debilitating as a human because the gap cannot I watch people try to fill the gap with a whole bunch of shit that never fills it. And for me it's like, no, I think, the hard part is the you know, the bridge that needs to be built is built with accepting that you made a mistake and learning what that means for you.
You just used language
Mhm.
that was incredibly martial arts like,
Very good.
and you said the words quite literally. It's the ability to take a hit
Mm.
and to not be little children who can't take the hit. And literally, for years, I've had my big journal book. There's a quote on the cover from Rocky
Mm.
that literally says, "Success is not about how hard you can hit. It's about how you take a hit and keep moving forward.
Mm.
How much you can take and keep moving forward, That is how winning is done. That's the quote.
Mm.
That we're playing this game where we want to hit everything and show our success. Look how good I am. Look at me, performance.
Mm.
And, my Facebook looks so good. Oh, performance. But what you're really talking about is resilience and anti-fragility.
Yeah.
That the ability to say sorry is not weak at all.
Well,
It's how we bounce back.
but it's because taking responsibility, taking accountability, it it actually isn't about taking the blame. When we take accountability in that moment, it isn't about us taking the blame. It's about us claiming the lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And as a project professional, you know, I think the longer you've been a project professional, potentially you understand how much value the lessons are. In which case we end up becoming like I will make hopefully wisely informed project decisions, but I won't scrutinize them quite as deeply as I might have when I was a novice professional. Because so much of what I lead now, I kind of just want to like, well, if it's not the right move, we're going to find out quickly and we're going to fix it. It's the fail fast
Yeah.
because so much of the work we do now in projects specifically, we have to be agile. We don't have any choice. The competing constraints are mounting every second. And the triple constraints we always have talked about is, time, scope, and cost. These variables, man, they are more variable today than they ever have been. And so the agility required means I'm just farming the lessons, which means and the funny thing is when you let go of your need to, you know, be right and to get it right, do you misstep more? Yeah, maybe. Maybe we make a few more miscommunications. Maybe, but because I to this day specifically have cultivated a lack of fear around that for myself. I'm immediately able to go, "Oh, what have I learned?" I mean, being able to apologize very quickly and mean it. And what am I apologizing for? Well, if for instance, so let's make this really tangible. If I happen to mispronounce someone because I make an assumption, it's a very common thing. Certainly too when I'm dealing with, like, lots of students, and hundreds of different people, and of course, there's that temptation based on the way the name is written if you're reading it, or the image of them, or when you meet them face to face, you just automatically are gonna assume they are either one or the other gender. But in reality, it's an arrogant move nowadays, and, in the short term of learning that lesson, it felt well, I meet a lot of professionals still to this day that feel very offended when they've mispronounced someone. You know? The person who was mistakenly pronounced doesn't seem to take it as hard as the person who did it. And so that shows up in over apologizing. "Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that." Or, "Well, whatever, who cares?" This sort of blindness to it. But they end up taking more of it on, and I'm like, "Okay, how did I get to the stage where I am now?" When and if I make that mistake, I just absolutely very quickly in the moment, "I'm so sorry." And then I change it and we move on, and it's over. Now, um, in the beginning, I might have tried to give them context. I might have tried to explain why I did it. "Oh, I made the assumption. I'm so sorry about that." Or arrogantly way back when I really didn't understand how much of an opportunity this was to really build rapport and engage with other humans. I just thought everyone was being ridiculous. And my presence and my countenance showed that. All of that behavior was about me protecting me. Immediately responding with, "Oh, I'm sorry." Taking the lesson and moving on. It doesn't happen to me very much anymore. And the funny thing is that I will tell you, um, I don't remember the day that I decided that pronouns didn't bother me anymore, because I know in the beginning of my professional experience, me having to add my pronoun to things or add pronouns to other people, it felt like an impediment, and I didn't like it, and I didn't understand it. But how I moved very quickly from that to where I am now, which is it's an opportunity, is because I just recognized if I'm trying to build rapport and I want to move the mission forward and I want the relationship to be great, then I'm just interested in what's going to smooth that over. And the fastest way to smooth that over is for me, Amber, ego, to get out of the way. Just get out of the way. And gradually my heart changed to the point where now I'm very desirous of understanding people in all different diversity. But at the beginning, it wasn't that way. I just realized that part of practicing that, taking responsibility and being accountable for my impact, um, it's much easier to fix it in the future if you can learn the lesson very quickly in the moment and then move forward differently.
So I love where this is going. And I have a curious question, and it may be a little bit from the side, but I'm curious what you think about this. I often think about the difference between efficient and effective.
Hmm.
And I'm curious because the value of learning a mistake is an effective piece.
Hmm.
But it's almost as if we've over indexed on efficiency, the least amount of effort.
Hmm.
Because we've have so much value on efficiency today and mistakes are not efficient. Do you think that's part of why we've moved away from accountability and valuing mistakes today?
That's a good question. I mean, the first thing that came to my mind when you said that efficiency and was kind of like, well, but who holds the metric? Who gets to define it? Because if we're suggesting that like the social constructs are the metric, then it depends on the room you're in. Depends on the organization you're in. As a project professional, oftentimes I'm invited to be a leader in a room that I am not a part of. I'm not there. I don't work for the organization. I don't have any. I mean, literally, you could say I don't really have a lot of skin in the game
Mhm.
except the project. So when I come into that room, how do I know? Um, and I think taking responsibility for how I might impact that room in the short term, I'll tell you, as a PM, like if I want to build rapport with the interest holders sitting around that table, I'm not going to lead with ego. Period. Now, I can have thoughts about how I might want to lead with ego. But if I behave that way, I'll get disinvited to the room. And in the short term, that's just not productive for, the purpose that I find myself in those moments. And so, the metric becomes really important for me to figure out.
Mhm.
A lot of the times because I talk a lot about interest holder engagement, like that's really what we're doing is we're trying to figure out other people's metrics. Right?
Yeah.
How do you define value in this situation? And if they define value by rapport and relationship, then we get deep, we get dirty, and we go right in. But and that's where I love that. I want to be there. I want to be down and dirty and deep. That's just who I am. And I think I I build relationships with individuals, and when I can have a conversation with someone where we're talking authentically about each other and we're not worried about what each other thinks of it, we're just being our authentic selves. I'm all over that. But as a professional project manager, I have interest holders that won't give me the time of day for any of that. That doesn't mean that I then go, well, never mind. No, it means I really have to work a little bit harder to understand what do they value. And so I think this is where the rub and how we define being professional comes, because we think about what's professional in that moment is based on the context of what the interest holder values, because that's what we're asking for. And when you make a mistake in front of someone you are trying to gain respect and trust of, the quickest way to maintain that trust, if you have any of it yet, or to build it if you don't, is not to make them look dumb, like they've made a poor decision or they've made a misstep. So it is to take the burden on to yourself. It's interesting, in traditional kind of interest holder engagement, or we would have called it then stakeholder management. Traditionally, this is all that the work was, you basically give them what they want. and you try to meet their needs. And of course, what we discovered, or what many of us discover along the way, is the project suffers. You might please one interest holder, but you disappoint many others, and the project isn't optimal, or it is only for one interest holder, and that's too narrow. So we then create this sort of, well, how do we engage multiple expectations and values and at the same time still lead well? And that just really honestly takes accountability on the project team. We have to take responsibility. It doesn't mean that we should doormat ourselves to interest holders, but it does mean that we want to consider what we know of them and what we understand they care for. And then based on that metric, we can, move forward. So I guess for me, I get stuck in answering your question because I'm like, well, you know, what's the criteria?
Right. So with a couple of minutes left, how can we as individuals own our own space around mistakes and growing from them?
Well, I'll be really practical with you. Bless you, by the way. You seem to have a tickle.
Yeah.
um, for me, one of my kids one day said, something off the cuff about, well, mom never has to apologize. And I remember, and they were young at the time. And I remember thinking, what do you mean I never have to apologize? Immediately, I didn't even take accountability in that moment. I just defended, right? And I'm like, give me an example. And I was like, I look back and go, wow, there was some clear evidence that I had issues. And they just said, yeah, you never say you're sorry. Like if you're wrong, you never apologize. You've never come back and said you're sorry. To which I was like, that's not true. You're not true. That's not true. You don't know what you're talking about. But these are my kids. I love them more than anything. And I came to the realization that my children believe that to be true of me. So whether I think it's true or not, the metric for me is they do, which means if I want to maintain that, if I want them to maintain the notion that their mother never apologizes, um, uh, like then I won't deal with it. But I didn't love that. But hearing that that was their impression of me made me kind of go, that's first of all, it's not true of my heart. It may be true of my behavior. And I wasn't able to say this out loud in front of them. But I just, that moment that I took away, I started to unpack it and I realized, okay, they have the impression that that's true. Whether it is or not, I need to maybe even overcompensate. And so for me, I then began to count how many times I would apologize to them. And in the short term, I realized, oh, I never do. So I came to the conclusion that they're right.
Mm.
They're really right. Now, arguably, they were quite young at the time. And part of why I didn't apologize is because I was right in whatever that was.
Right.
But their impression was that if I was found to be wrong, I still wouldn't come back to them.
Mm.
And so I started to not necessarily apologize when I wasn't, in need of apology. But I started to engage them and give more explanation about why I thought certain things were the way they were. And I didn't do it after they called me on it. I did it up front. So I would say, hey, you know what? I'd really love it if you would go to your room, pick up your dirty laundry, separate it, and then bring out the dirty dishes. But I didn't say it like, do it now. I would say, I'm just really concerned that you've got a busy week and I've got a busy week. And these things might create problems for us if we don't handle them now. And I need more forks for dinner. So I created more context. And what I discovered was that automatically, that countenance made them feel like I was being more authentic. And then I started to practice, well, when can I apologize for behavior? And certainly in the teen years, in the case of both my kids, there's 5 years apart. So we had a staggered thing. But I realized with my second one, apologies to my oldest, with my second one, I was far more conscious of times where I could say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. And it became just something I had to learn about myself. And actually, it was much easier to do at work than it was at home because, quite frankly, the stakes are higher for me at home because I'm incredibly emotionally attached to motherhood and my children and my family life, and my work not quite as a part of my worth, I would say. Um, but we have to practice owning our missteps. And someone recently said to me, "Well, I'm never wrong." To which I said, "Well, maybe one way as a leader to own your missteps and believing you're never wrong is to tell people that you believe that." And they were like, "What?" And I'm like, "Own it." And they just were like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "In the room. Just say, you know what, guys? Like, I really work so hard to make sure that everything I say feels always completely right based on all the criteria. And I that's just who I am. And I'm more than confident that I'm wrong sometimes, but I just want you to know that, like, I'll probably be blindsided by that, but I just want you to know this is how I see things. I said, if a leader says that, automatically they're inviting the opportunity for others to see them more honestly. And for them to also recognize that this is someone who's human and recognizes perfection is elusive. They may, feel they're right a lot of the time, but they can still make mistakes. So it's really
Right.
about creating just a little more space for it, right? And I think practically that's what I mean. Own your missteps. Sometimes people are going to have to hit you over the head with them because you're not going to see it because you're so confident you're right. But when someone comes barreling at you, professionally or unprofessionally, and you have impacted them to a state of calling you out or emotionally responding to you, you need to take that few moments and think to yourself, wait a minute, whether I think I'm right or not, I've had an impact that wasn't what I planned, and regroup.
I really love that about no matter what we are in terms of our position of correctness or incorrectness, own our impact.
Yeah. In which case, you might not have misstepped that much, but the way you've made someone else feel is the misstep.
Right.
And that requires our attention.
Beautifully said. I want to say thank you so much. This was not a misstep of a podcast. This podcast landed, and we'll come back with the final podcast of the season.
The
So
final
listen up, listeners, for the
next week.
final one next week.